human beings are extremely fascinated by measurement. It's deeply rooted in our biology, psychology, and culture. We measure everything. We want to measure everything. But why? It comes from the need to understand and control. We love to control things. And like, look around, we measure everything. We measure time, distance, volume. We measure ourselves very heavily. The height, the weight, percentage of body fat. We measure our age, number of marriages, annual income. We measure everything. And in fact, lots of technological advancements come from the need to measure more accurately or measure things that were not measured before. And if we look at the story of Galileo, of Copernicus, they got a new invention called telescope. They got a tool to measure, observe distant celestial bodies like stars and planets. And thanks to that, we could understand in a way bigger picture of what is out there. So let me introduce myself after this brief introduction. I'm Renata Hartel and I'm a co-founder of WasteTracker. Of course, we are one type of measurement. And I believe that, measuring really helps us problem solve and help us turn abstract into tangible data. So things that we didn't understand, we can understand and we can communicate better. So we can agree at what time we're meeting. We can explore, we can innovate around those things, and we can take informed decisions. I'm on a smart building market for over 10 years now. And when I was young, when I started my career, I was all about the user experience, how people feel, how people interact. Now that I'm older and I think little wiser, I'm all about measurements, all about data, because that really helps us move things forward. And I want to talk with you about measuring today because I think it's a base element for smart buildings. Without understanding how buildings are used and how things are used, we cannot make world better. And of course, as I said, we measure so many things. So for smart buildings, I want to focus on utility meters. Do you know what utility is? Utility is this type of service that's like basic service we cannot live without. It's electricity, water, natural gas, sewage, waste, and telecommunications. So digital connectivity is one of the utilities we cannot longer live without. So I want to go back in time with you to 1815, over 200 years ago. That's the year where first utility meter was invented. Shoot out your bets. What did it measure? Louder. Water. What did you say? Electricity. Electricity is a common bet, but I need to bring you to a history. Electricity as a product to be served to houses was invented only 61 years later, in 1876. What's very interesting is that electricity got its meter 12 years after it was invented, which is very quickly. Especially that electrification of households in Europe and in North America only started in 20th century. Prior to that, street lighting and some household devices were powered by gas. We had gas irons, of course, stovetops to cook, but also gas-powered fridges. So gas was the first thing that we measured as utility. Water, 1850, not that long after. And you know what was the motivation to invent this meter, gas meter? It was to settle the billing between gas company and the customer. So how much should I really pay? And one fun fact that I found is that in Poland, where I'm from, first gas meters actually had slot machine. So you would go to gas company, buy a token, put this token, and that would allow gas to flow. If you didn't have token or your token finished, it would basically stop your gas. You had to go and buy a new one. Very funny thing also, it caused first hackers who were hacking those devices so you could have gas for free. And first gas meters and first water meters, because those were flow meters, they worked in the way that they were mechanical devices that had a disk, and it would count how many times this disk would rotate. Fun fact, another one. Do you know how first electricity meters worked? They measured time that you used electricity. They very quickly became obsolete because the new technology came where you could actually switch off the light individually in different rooms. First, it was you have electricity or you don't. And then they invented switches. So we had to start measuring how much power we consume because it was not evenly distributed across our building. And it was Thomas Edison who came up with a meter that was basically induction power disk that rotated as quickly as the power consumed. Further on, what happened with meters was that they changed from mechanical to digital because we started to use ultrasonic technology to measure the flow. No more disk, no more breaking meter. And what's today? Thankfully, we have smart meters that are connected. And they are connected since about beginning of 90s. So for us to read meters, we use different protocols that communicate with servers to provide this data. First protocol that was used for smart metering was Modbus, invented in 79, which was actually not invented to work with meters, but it was what's called response protocol. So someone had to call and be like, knock, knock, what's the status of your meter? And meter would respond, yeah? Now, what's the most typically used is Modbus. Modbus, it's an open protocol, free of charge, can be used by different BMS companies that is strictly invented to read meters. M-bus, it's meter bus. So it provides live information. There are also different protocols that can be used for meters, but honestly, 99% of buildings I work with use Modbus. And today, thanks to that, we have live data. So we open BMS system and we see our water meter is at this amount of cubic meters of usage. Our electricity meter is at this state of kilowatts hours. And mostly in all buildings, that's it. What we're really going forward today is to integrate this information from meters to show what's the real consumption. And some systems provide analytics. Rarely, meter itself provides analytics. And it's really big push to now have those analytics. So not only I know what's the state of my meter, but also I know what's the change since yesterday. What is the usage of my electricity in July this year compared to July last year? And where we're going to for the future is to really have insights from those analytics. So if last July I used way more electricity, what does it mean? Was it correlated with weather? Was it hot July last year, hotter than this year? And what can I do to decrease this electricity consumption. And that's very important for thinking of benchmarks. So we can understand and compare building by building, category of consumption to category of consumption. What's really needed for us to go with advancement of technology is to have data ontology. So to have a standardized way of how devices are called. So if we integrate different softwares, we can clearly get data without spending months on translating how this BMS system decided to call their metering and how to read data from this metering in a structured way. Who of you has experience in any form of using artificial intelligence with actually understanding metering, electricity, water, and other utilities? By show of hand. I hope that when we meet in 5 years, everybody will raise hands, because that's absolutely the future. There are solutions already out there, and there is no technician in the world, no HVAC expert, no BMS automation expert that can do what AI will do. Because if we're increasing amount of meters, and we are, because every occupier wants to know how much exactly they are consuming in which type of category, then human is not empowered enough with our time and our understanding to do something with this data. It will only be AI who can quickly learn and respond to the changing way of how building operates. And as you see, and you probably know that I'm gonna get there, the technology over the last 200 years has significantly increased to provide data and to have our utilities under control, because the need to measure comes from understanding and control. But still there are things that are gonna come in the distant future. Like when we have more understanding, we're gonna go towards smart grid, so how utilities can really like work in not building setting, but neighborhood setting, city setting, how we can, trade energy between each other as more and more energy is also produced in buildings. How we're going to decentralize the utility providers and do dynamic pricing, because if we use consume produce, we should be paying more on that. And ESG is also driving us there. But there is still one thing that's really from all the utilities not measured in buildings. And if we don't measure, how can we manage that? And that's, of course, waste. Because waste is a forgotten utility, something that we dump and don't care about. And someone cares, it's planet. And planet and ESG reporting is really pushing us to understand better. So just like Copernicus, just like Galileo, we can use this to understand better of what we can do. So I hope all of you been there already, but I see some people that were not yet on our WasteTracker stand to see how the waste metering comes to place to understand how much waste is produced. We basically provide a waste terminal that it's a smart waste meter that gets data before waste is disposed. And one of the most important in measuring waste is to understand the source. So who produced it? So before cleaning personnel dumps it to big container, they put it on the scale, they tap their card, we understand who you are, and then you just click and show who's the person. We manage people who can get access to the system. We create their accounts, we recognize which language they talk and who they can operate, and we provide them with an invitation code that then they can use to register on WasteTracker terminal. They come to the waste room, they tap their card, the system is like, who are you? I don't know you. Introduce yourself. They put the code that they got, they register, and from this moment, they're metering their waste. What's most important is that every occupier can really understand it, and that's, I believe, just the beginning, where waste, it's where 200 years ago gas was, or 150 years ago electricity was. And I hope that we will really have big progress in how utilities are saved, so the carbon emission and the impact on the planet is way lower. Thank you very much. I invite you to our stand, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.